Hey people, welcome to the Gosh Daniel Pod. This is episode 28, and we're talking about the Mistborn book because it's the bi-weekly book club
Hey
episode.
there, and welcome to BOOKCLUB.
Okay. Hi. And we're talking books because we're big nerds. This time we're going to talk about a book I like because it's a Brandon Sanderson book, and I like Brandon Sanderson books.
Yay.
This is actually also a series that I just re-listened to on Audible, the whole thing, in a few days because I'm really into it, and this is my third time going through it. Because I like these books because they're Brandon Sanderson books and they're in the Cosmere. This book was published in 2006, and it was written by Brandon Sanderson, and it was published by Tor, and it is part of the Cosmere, and it is Mistborn Era 1's first book, and it is Mistborn: The Final Empire, and it's a good book. I like this book.
It really is.
How many times can I say book in a sentence, do you think?
I have no
We'll find
idea.
out today. So, this book was very good. It was a good book. We should do a plot summary or something, right? I feel like
You do the plot summary because you probably wouldn't. It's been a while since I've read it, so you are probably better
Okay.
explaining it.
So, the Final Empire is a place where mists come out at night, obscuring everything. You can't see anything at night because there's mists, and all the people are afraid to go out in the mists because you can't see anything, and they think there are things called mist wraiths that will come and they'll kill you, and they'll steal your body or something like that. So that's the world we live in. Ash falls from the sky. It's really hot out. The sun is red. The sky is red. All the plant life, they're brown. There aren't flowers. Stuff like that. That's the basic. This basic world stuff. We follow the character Vin, who is a young street thief. Actually, before I can really explain that, I should go into the social structures. The whole world is unified in this thing called the Final Empire, which has been around for 1,000 years, and it's ruled by the Lord Ruler, who's been around for 1,000 years, and people have tried killing him, and they can't kill him because he's the Lord Ruler, and he's invincible. He's like a god or something. So yeah, he rules them, and then there are two classes of people. There are the noblemen and the ska, and the ska are the slaves. And so basically everybody is a slave except for the noblemen. I guess you can have some higher end ska people who are like craftsmen and stuff like that, but even still, you don't make that much money. And anyway, so there's a bunch of slaves, and so you'll find the book follows street thief Ska Vin, and she is all alone, except she's in a thieving gang crew thing, and she gets beaten all the time, and it's really sad. It's really bad for her. And then some guy basically saves her and tells her that she is a Mistborn, which is an allomancer, which uses all the different powers of allomancy, which is the magic system in the book. So allomancy, you take a piece of metal and you eat that piece of metal, and then you can basically digest it at will. In a way, it's called burning, and that basically opens up its power to you. So different metals do different things. If you burn pewter, it makes you stronger for as long as you're burning it. Tin makes you see things. It makes your senses more perceptive, I guess. There are some that let you push metal, and some that let you pull metal, and you see all these blue lines going towards things. There's a lot of them. But yeah, so anyways, great. So she's a Mistborn, so she can use all the different powers. And the thing about being a Mistborn is that that's only allowed for the noblemen. So the noblemen are not allowed to breed with the Ska because they can't let the Ska have Mistborn allomantic powers. For some reason, that's what the Lord Ruler says.
It's kind of like the purebloods from Harry Potter.
Well, yeah, sort of, except it's not. Because it's like you can get killed for having a Ska child if you're a nobleman.
So it's like if the pureblood people...
It's like, yeah, I guess it's Voldemort's rules-ish, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But that's the thing, is that it just encourages noblemen to sleep with Ska and then kill them the next night. So it gets pretty dark and depressing there. But anyway, so Vin ends up being a Mistborn, even though she's a Ska, so that's sort of cool. and then she joins the thieving crew, a different one, where with another Mistborn Scott, and then a bunch of Allomancers who are Scott. And so if you only have one Mistborn power, then you're misting. So there are a bunch of mistings. There's the Mistborn. She joins that crew, and they're literally hired to take down the entire Final Empire. And they're hired to take down the entire Final Empire and kill the Lord Ruler. And so basically they do. That's the
good.
look.
Spoilers, but that's good.
Yep. It's good. It's really cool, actually, and everything about it is amazing. So yeah, that's the plot summary, and it's a good book.
Yeah, I remember reading it, even though it was a while ago, and I remember how much I loved it. And when you did the plot summary, I was getting them flashbacks and was really getting into it again because it's such a good book.
It's a really, really good book. So characters are like 18 out of 18. They're really well developed. You understand what every character is about. Yeah. And I like that they have characters that are like, they're all thieves and they're all criminals, but they're like good people. Some of them are. And then you see criminals that are bad people. It's interesting. Yeah. There's a good contrast there. Basically, the whole point of it is Vin is sort of learning how to trust throughout all of this because, her brother used to beat her and take her from crew to crew, and he sort of trained her not to trust anybody because I guess he was trying to protect her in a way. But she learns with this crew, so Kelsier is the main leader of the crew, and he's also a Mistborn, and it's cool, and he's really good at stuff. But so she learns throughout this whole thing that she can trust those people because Kelsier operates not like in a way that's not distrustful of everybody else that he's working with, because he said that he would rather trust somebody and get betrayed than not trust them at all or something like that. So her whole character arc is, she's coming from this place where she's being beaten all the time and she can't trust anybody, to a place where she's almost living like a pampered life as she's taking down the Final Empire. She's super rich. She gets to go to all these balls and pretend to be a noblewoman and all this stuff. And she's learning that there are so many people like she can trust, and then that becomes sort of, it's a struggle for her throughout the entire trilogy.
Wow, you're making me want to reread this.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, so she slowly sort of warms up to the rest of the crew. The crew sort of warms up to her. The crew teaches her about her powers and about different things about the world, and then then at the end, you just have a bunch of action and then they kick butt. So there's a good mix in this book and in all of Sanderson's books between like really detailed and complicated magic systems and stuff like that, really good and detailed and like heartfelt character development, and then really good intriguing plot and world building, and none of those feel lessened by any of the other elements. It's really unique. And there's also a lot of good action scenes, now that I think about it. Like, also has a good balance of, like, action and, like, good dialogue. Which a lot of books sometimes will just have good dialogue and then don't really describe action, and it's just over. I mean, he's super descriptive, in describing action scenes, in describing somebody's facial expressions, in describing the clothes they're wearing, in describing, somebody's feelings. There's a lot of detail that just makes this world feel like unique and also real,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Do you have anything to say about this book?
Well, I like it. No, I remember reading it, and I don't know, that was back when, that was back when, like, I didn't read too many books. And so having read that book and it being like really good and really intriguing, and it was just such a different book, I guess, because it was kind of like, I don't know, its plot, it's so creative and interesting. And I mean, I guess the whole like having to take down like a hierarchy or that's not right and it's evil, that's like kind of cliche, but like that
yeah,
the whole system of magic and burning and all that stuff was so interesting and intriguing. And then it's complemented well with all the action and then the character arcs and story arcs and all these little missions that they have to do and go through. And so, it was just such a good book. I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up a good point there, that it's sort of cliche that they're just taking down this power that's insurmountable and, is controlling the entire world, this giant empire that they have to take down as a small group of rebels. Like, we see that everywhere. You'd think of, Hunger Games or something like that with the way it's set up. But, the way that he does it and the way that he develops it is not as cliche as it sounds. Because, the basic plot idea is so freaking, basic, cliche, and uninspired. But the way that it progresses, the way that the world works, all the different unique mysteries. I guess the tagline of this book is that there's always another secret, and that is true the more that you read through this trilogy, because there's stuff that they don't even explain in this book, that sometimes they don't even explain literally until 6 books in. It's a trilogy, but then there's another trilogy hundreds of years later, then another trilogy hundreds of years later. But he's only written the first 6 anyways. But there's stuff that they don't explain from this first book that you end up seeing, 6 books later. There's always another secret, and just the way that keeps you going and that keeps you interested lets you get over the fact that, yes, it's another small band of rebels destroying this, this giant insurmountable force. And I don't know, there's some really good stuff that they do to play around with that a little bit. I mean, when she actually... Okay, so I'm going to go into even more spoilers now. So Kelsier, who's ends up becoming a little bit of a father figure to her and is the leader of the crew and is another Mistborn, teaches her how to use her powers. He ends up sacrificing himself. So he lets the Lord Ruler kill him in public in order to enrage all of the Ska to rise up and sort of defend themselves a bit more to eventually take down the final empire. And then Vin has to kill the Lord Ruler all by herself. But the Lord Ruler has this whole line of dialogue where he's talking about people could chop off his head. He's been burned at the stake, his head has been chopped off, all this stuff, and he still survived and looks the same. And then she kills him, and it's cool because it also sounds, the more I talk about it, the more it sounds like, wow, this either is really poorly explained or it's really boring. But it's incredible how, I don't know, it all makes sense still. So it's not just, that's another thing that I like about his books, is that it's not just well, they were the good guys, so they won, sort of a thing, It's more of this actually makes sense within the world and what they're able to do. And none of it seems that's, obviously this would happen because, they're the heroes, so they would just have access to a power that nobody else knew about for thousands of years. There's nothing like that. It's just, it actually works and it makes logical sense within the world in a convincing way that doesn't leave you... It doesn't leave you annoyed that something so cliche happened. It just, well, that makes more sense than I've seen it happen, than I've seen that sort of story arc,
But by the end, wasn't there I remember, I don't know, I hope I'm not getting this confused or something, but by the end, the main ruler god dude,
the Lord Ruler. Yeah,
the Lord Ruler. Sorry. He was well, there has to be someone that's a ruler, and there's always going to be someone, and so it's you should be grateful that it's me because he said I was your god even if you didn't know it, stuff like that. Yeah, I guess. And then by the time she kills him, she realizes something, there's always going to be someone or something like that. I don't know, there was a realization that was really interesting by the end. That it basically, his argument was this world needed me. Somebody was gonna do it, and I could do it. I could take care of this world, and I literally was your god, even if you couldn't tell. That sort of thing. I guess that the thing is, I don't want to get into spoilers since you haven't read the entire trilogy. Uh-huh.
A lot of that stuff is not explained until the third book. What he's talking about
well,
there.
now
But
I will read
it
the
is
trilogy.
interesting. You see themes of him being like, well, somebody needs to be a tyrant, and then they're like, no, democracy, sort of a thing. You see elements of other characters throughout the rest of the series sort of struggling with this building a new government and thinking like I can't help these people when democracy is there, because the people don't want what they need. They want what they're used to. You get interesting things like that where people feel like, should I actually basically become the next Lord Ruler or what? There's this bit of dialogue from the third book where somebody sees one of the main characters and says like, "It's you, isn't it? The Lord Ruler," like years after the Lord Ruler is dead, right? And he just goes, "Close enough." And like it's interesting how the Lord Ruler sort of continues to haunt them basically throughout the rest of the series, just by what he stood for and what he was trying to do in life. And I don't know, it's interesting, and yeah, it gets pretty cool. But another thing I guess that I can't talk about too much is that they set up this insurmountable, like, you cannot literally kill this guy in the first book. And then in the second book, they give you another, like a perspective change where you go, okay, these people are this small and the Lord Ruler's this big. Okay, they passed that. But then, oh, the Lord Ruler is just really small compared to all the problems we have to deal with now. They're like giant, actually like unimaginable in terms of how big they are. There's a good, I don't know. It sort of shows you it gives you a good sense of the gray area once you finish the series of like there's right and there's wrong, but sometimes the wrong things are done and sometimes they're to preserve a good thing, and sometimes the right things are done but that only perpetuates a wrong thing. And he plays a lot with those themes throughout the rest of the series. But a lot of what it is this first book is everything's black and white. The next books are, was it all black and white back then?
Yeah.
A lot of it is just gaining perspective on that first book. So rereading it after finishing the series is sort of a must. It's really interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, that's actually really cool that happened the way it did, because like that Brandon Sanderson used the format of a trilogy to do that, I guess.
Yeah, like
I think that's exciting.
It's incredible because so he does the trilogy format of first book is standalone, or first, installment is standalone, and then the next two build on that, make the problem bigger, and close it.
Which makes it even seem more realistic, though, because that's probably what would happen. There'd of course be after effects of that, and those problems do sound like what would happen. It makes sense. Culture would be scarred, I guess, from that, and would have to find ways to recover. So that's
right. Yeah, you ended in 1,000-year tyranny, but what do you know about starting a government? You've been the world has been like this for 1,000 years. You don't even know how the world got this way.
Yeah.
So you don't know how to fix it. You don't know how it was before. Yeah. Without spoiling too much, that's the basic premise. But an interesting thing about this series is, he had that first series. He calls this Era 1 Mistborn. Then he has another trilogy. Actually, it's 4 books that he's working on now. That's Era 2. And he's making 4 trilogies. So,
jeez.
Era 1, Era 2 is like a Western, and with like the Mistborn stuff in it. It's amazing. They're shorter. They're good books. I love them. I've read them like 4 times each. Something like that. But then he's coming out with Era 3, which is the third trilogy, and it's going to be like 1980s tech stuff like that with Mistborn powers, which is crazy because the first one's like your basic classic fantasy. Then it gets into a Western, then it gets to an 80s thing, and then Era 4 is a space opera.
Oh my
like Star Wars.
Word. Dude,
and that's what he's doing.
That sounds so epic.
With that series. Yeah, it's cool.
That sounds so awesome.
I can't wait to read those, but he hasn't written them yet, so.
Yeah, I am so excited now. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think they'll be really good. The second era, the first book in the second era is to basically explain to you what the second era is like, and how Mistborn works in a Western sort of realm, and it's not that interesting. But then the second book happens, like a normal anything that he writes. You know, the second one happens, and you realize the problems are much bigger. It's much deeper than you saw in the first book, and then it builds off of that. So.
Yeah,
he really likes that theme, I guess. And because they're Mistborn books and they're in the Cosmere, which is his universe, he actually has a shared universe of books. So all of his Mistborn books will eventually connect to all of his other books because they're all in the same universe and they all are tied together in unique ways that you would not understand from reading his first two books. It's amazing how he left Easter eggs in there and stuff. Yeah, we did, but we didn't really explain the Cosmere. We just talked about stuff in it.
Oh, that's true.
But yeah, so the Mistborn series will connect to the Stormlight Archive, which are these giant, massive, 1,000-page books that are amazing on a different world. And then there's the Elantris, which is another book on a different world. And then there's Warbreaker. There are many, many books, but I would start with Mistborn because that's not gonna, explain to you the sort of style that he writes in, because he writes in different styles for different series. They all have different tones, different kinds of worlds, but Mistborn is sort of the quintessential Sanderson, if you will.
Okay, then.
It's important to read that trilogy first, just because you want to get a sense of how grand the scope can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
That shows you how grand the scope could get or has gotten, and somehow he expands that with the other books. So it's a good starting place, I think.
Yeah.
It'll introduce you to his unique style of magic systems. And the same magic system from Mistborn is not employed in any of his other worlds, which is another unique thing about it. They have different magic systems. Anyways, I don't want to bore you with the whole Cosmere, but yeah, Mistborn is great. Characters 18 out of 18. Plot, I would say for this, like, the plot, it would go, it's developed really well, even though it's like a cliche plot, but it's developed in such a way that doesn't feel cliche, so it's still an 18 out of 18, because it's about how it's written, not about which arc I find annoying and which arc is normal, like,
It's true, yeah.
You can do great stuff with any of the, like, seven different stories, seven different unique stories, or whatever, but, yeah, and then I guess his writing is very detailed and very unique, very good. Handles dialogue. To be honest, his dialogue can go between, like, good, normal, basic dialogue and slight hints of Joss Whedon. But he actually makes the universe work around that a little bit better. Like, the universe he has created and the tone that he has set for the universe possibly fits the dialogue better. So, and then, his descriptions, his magic systems, it's all really, really up there. Actually, I think he teaches creative writing at colleges. So, sort of he earns the 18 out of 18 there, too. I would say Mistborn is really an 18 out of 18 book. But
yeah, I agree.
Then you have to rate it with the rest of his books, and if you're rating them against each other, it's not even his best book, even though it's like a perfect book. It's hard to explain for me. I'm a massive Sanderson fan, anyways.
Yeah, we noticed.
I mean, that's the thing, is that we've talked about Star Wars books, and now we've talked about Sanderson books. I mean, there's not much more of a way. Like, there's nothing you can do to make me talk more than ask me about Sanderson or Star Wars, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's what this episode was about. So.
Yep. So that's the thing. You can suggest a book at Gosh Daniel Pod on Twitter, or Patreon is patreon.com/GoshDaniel if you would like to give us money.
Hunt the Bunk Gunther, by the way, for
thanks,
being
guys.
Awesome people.
And he who wishes not to be named or whatever. And then what else is there to do? I mean, we're on YouTube. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher. That's it,
Yeah, that's
I
it.
think. So, yep. That is
Yep.
the end.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day or night or morning or
Whatever
day.
time. So that's
Okay.
it, guys. I'll see you later.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.